Welcome to Hannah's Heart.
So Hannah, she's just one of the women who did struggle with infertility in the Bible.
No matter who we are, we can be inspired by the fact that Hannah took her pain to God, and God heard her and was with her.
So when she was praying at the temple, she had been weeping and not eating, and her lips were moving, but her eyes were closed, and the priest was like, "Hey, why are you drunk at the temple?"
It can become an obsession when you want a child so deeply.
And desiring that baby and to be a mama. Every holiday, every Mother's Day.
This is not a show that's going to promise you a certain outcome, but this is a show that says, however God answers your cry, we know that He's enough. Hi, I'm Kendra, and this is Hannah's Heart on American Family Radio. And Ann is not with us today, but I am joined in studio with some excellent guests, which we'll get to them in just a moment. But I am so excited about today's theme. Today we are going to be talking about how do we respond when you feel that God is redirecting your dreams. So specifically how that relates to infertility and miscarriage is, maybe you've been praying for a biological child, or you think that child is going to come in a certain way, and God is subtly moving your heart to redirect your dreams to another dream that He has for you. And who better to have on than Amy Suddeth and her amazing husband, Adam. And I got to tell you a little history on these two, because long before I was married, long before I knew I was going to struggle with infertility, the Lord put this family in my life. And I came to work for American Family Association almost 12, 13 years ago. And I was asked, I was just a little, right out of college, no experience in filmmaking, and was asked to produce a film that would be about infertility and a woman's struggle. And the film is actually called Paper Dream. If you want to go see it, you can go to streaming.afa.net. And you can watch that film. It's also on Amazon Prime and on YouTube, or you can buy it on our AFA store. But anyway, so this film is about a woman who had to surrender her desire to have a biological child, and how God was redirecting her heart. And I knew nothing of that topic, not even being married at the time. And I met this amazing couple who also worked at AFA, and got to interview Amy Suddeth and hear about her. At that point, it had been 10 years of struggling with infertility. So let me go ahead and welcome them to the show. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Hey.
I just want to thank you all. You guys don't even know. I didn't know that I was going to struggle with infertility, and that God was going to use some specific things that you spoke into my life, Amy, that I would remember 10 years later, and was some lessons that I learned from just talking to you then about laying down my heart's desires, and that has helped me tremendously on my journey. And I think our audience has a lot to learn from you guys. Adam's tearing up already. He said you're going to have the tissues. You guys, this family has an incredible story, and I don't want to have a spoiler alert, but I have had 10 or 11 years of watching God's beautiful plan play out in your life as child after child has been added to the Suddeth family.
After child after child.
We're going to get into all of those details, but this is so fun. So I interviewed Amy off the record, right? But I happened to record it over 10 years ago for this project. And just recently, I found the file of the secret hidden file. And here's what's so beautiful, is I know the ending of your story now, but we interviewed you in the middle. Like, you did not know what was going to happen.
Not at all.
So I actually have a couple clips I want to play for you guys, and I want you to respond and fill the audience in on where God has brought you through this journey. So we're going to go ahead and play clip 1. And this is Amy's voice you're going to hear, as well as mine.
I've been prophesied over by 2 different people that had told me, that God's going to open up your womb, or God's going to give you a child, God's going to give you a son. And I sit there and think, well, the doctors just told me you can't have kids. And I know that God's not one of those that's going to say this and then it's not going to happen. But then I started to question, well, are they right? I've been married for 10 years now, and nothing. About 3 months ago, we were at church. I was at church, and I was at the altar praying, And I was really struggling trying to break through with God. And I was off talking to God, and this lady walks up to me and she just hugs me, and I wasn't even really thinking about it at the time. I had started, I guess, not really accepting it, but I was becoming more okay with it, And this lady comes up to me and she says, I don't think you're going to have to adopt. God's going to give you your own child through pregnancy. And I know she meant well, but unless God tells me that, I'm not going to be able to believe that from somebody that, and I'm not saying that she's not a good Christian person, but I just don't feel like she's at that level that she can come and tell me. And I broke down and I cried probably for an hour or so, because I had gotten not over it, but I was working through it. And then when people come up and say that kind of stuff, it's like, you don't know that. How can you know something like that? It actually gets people's hopes up without you even, you're not trying to, but then you go home and say, oh, maybe they're right. But if that's not God's will, then the best thing for somebody to say would be, you know what, God's got a plan.
Wow, there are some tears flowing in this studio. Tell us what it's like to hear where you were 10 years ago.
Overwhelming. Very overwhelming. I don't know. I got to process this for a minute.
It really was, at that time, we were still very new and had not really even started the journey that has been the 10 years. So hearing that part of it was kind of our before, not what we experienced the last 10, 11 years, because it's almost 21 years of marriage now. So,
wow.
So it's been almost 11 years.
So God was opening your heart to adoption, and now you have been in this adoption world for over 10 years. So we'll get into how many children God has brought to you and all of that in a little bit. But Amy, if you can kind of go back and reimagine some of these conversations, there were some people in your life at that time that it sounds like were trying to be encouraging, but maybe it was not helpful. Talk about that. What did that feel like, and what advice, do you give to people about what not to say to couples struggling with infertility?
I had that happen to me several times. Several people actually came up to me and was like, I don't think you're going to have to adopt, or, sometimes you might adopt and then you're going to have a baby. I don't think it's a have to adopt. I believe that was God's plan for us all along. And for somebody to come, like I said in there, I know they meant well, but I think if people would just step back and think, how is this going to affect this person when I say this, when they're struggling through this right now? And like I said in that, to say God has a plan, because he does.
Well, now we look at your life, and
right.
It's clear that God has had this beautiful story play out.
Exactly.
But you had no idea at that point how it was gonna be resolved. What was God doing in your heart? You talked about being at the altar and that there were some things you were working through. Tell me what was going on. What were you laying down?
Wow, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, flashback.
I think that I had just come to the realization that I can't change anything. That it's not going to be me that does the work. And as long as I am actively trying to take care of it myself instead of laying it down for God to handle, I'm not going to get anywhere. And so I can imagine I was probably there, like I said, it was 10 years ago. I can't be certain. I was probably just saying, okay, God, this, I've got to give this to you because I can't take it anymore.
Because the desire to have a biological child was like you have had that almost your whole life.
Absolutely. I think I was born wanting to be a mom.
I remember in the interview you said that you had hoped that you'd have a honeymoon baby. So you were hoping
absolutely.
From the beginning for
absolutely.
children.
I don't think Adam wanted kids that soon, but I did. That was just my desire. My desire to be a mom was so strong, And when it didn't happen, I was devastated. And everybody knew me knew how important that was to me. I just don't think that they quite understood that what they were saying was causing more harm than good.
Yes. Because you want to be working with what God is doing in somebody's life and not against. Just this Sunday, I was worshiping the Lord, and I was bawling. And it was the first time that I was able to actually mean it, and I thanked him for allowing me to struggle with infertility because of what I've seen that it's produced in my life. And I think it's so easy for us to have sometimes little idols, like making motherhood, biological motherhood, an idol, and God was tearing down these things and developing a new dependency on him. And I was truly able to see God knows what's best for me, and he knew that I needed that. And I can't imagine while I was struggling with all of that, if someone had come up to me and, maybe had some confusing things that's like, oh, no, it is going to work out this way. Adam, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I think that the reason for that time period was because family members were getting pregnant, and so there was a lot of pregnancies in the family, and she was struggling with not being pregnant during that time. So.
Well, there's another clip I want to play for you. And if you're just joining the show, this is a clip of Adam and Amy's testimony from 10 years ago on their journey to build a family. So let's go ahead and roll clip 2.
Then the other person is actually my brother's pastor's wife. And I'd gotten her to pray with me about it, and when we were out there, she called me before I left to come back home and said, God keeps bringing Hannah to my mind about you, and that, you're going to have a son. But Adam and I, in our minds, think, is that a natural son?
Right.
Or is that we are going to have a son in our family? It's one of those things that I'm unclear about, because I really believe that God has called us to adoption, but I don't know if that means that if we adopt, we'll have a kid. Because, so many people have told me, oh, once you adopt, you're going to get pregnant. And if I had $1 for every time somebody said that to me, I would be rich. But, I don't know.
So you didn't know back then what that meant, but do you have any ideas now what that word from the Lord about you having a son might have meant?
Well, I know that you didn't want to talk about how many kids we have.
Go ahead. Now's the time. Tell us.
We have 5 kids. One of those is a boy. And if I were ever to say...
And he was your first.
He was my first, absolutely. And, they say that Satan attacks the ones that God truly called. And believe me, our son has been attacked. It's a daily attack for him. I truly believe that God has a strong calling on his life that he just hasn't accepted yet. And so I don't believe that it was supposed to be biological.
This was God's plan all along. What's his name?
Alex.
All right. So tell us about how God brought Alex into your life.
It's actually kind of funny because when we were going through the foster care system, they give placements, or they give potential placements, and they set you up and allow you to meet some potential matches. And we were presented with Alex. He was not Alex at the time, but we were presented with Alex. Was it 3 times that we said no?
2 or 3 times, yeah.
2 or 3 times we actually said no, and then it was like, God was like, no, this is the one we want you to have. You're going to have Alex. And so we finally said, okay. And then we were told his siblings would not ever be a part of the family because one was still in the biological home and one was in a long-term foster care that was going to adopt her if it ever went to adoption.
And just to clarify, when you say he was not Alex at the time, you go ahead. What does that mean?
He was actually. We changed our first 4 children's names once they were adopted. Alex chose to have his name changed because he wanted a new life, wanted a fresh start, separation. So he wanted everything new, and so then we kind of. Not really coerced, but his youngest sister, we just kind of told her that we were changing her name.
Well, she was 2 and a half.
Yeah, she was. And so we actually kind of transitioned her because we started calling her Bug first before, so then we could get used to that. And then when we transitioned her name, she would never, and she really doesn't recognize her birth name as she now does her.
So the names of your children and ages. I'm going to look at Amy because that's probably a better mom question if she can break that down for us.
We have Alex. He's 16. We have Anna. She's 14. We have Addie, she's 10. We have Allie, she's 5, and Ava's 3.
And if you've noticed a common theme that they call themselves the A Squad, right?
Yes.
I absolutely love that. So 10 years ago, you had none of them. Are they 2 different sibling sets?
They are.
Is that right?
The 3
Okay.
older are biological siblings, and the 2 younger are biological siblings. And to go back to the reason that we didn't choose Alex is because we had it in our mind that God had us a plan for a sibling group. And so to just have Alex, that was going against what
you thought
what we
God
thought
had for you. Yeah.
But then we ended up getting his 2 sisters and had that sibling group anyways. Had we just listened to God, then we wouldn't have had to wait as long.
Hindsight's 2020, huh?
Right.
To see now.
And they had never lived together.
Wow.
The 3 of them had never lived
So
together.
what an opportunity for them to be together as siblings. Okay, well, I have another clip that I want to play because flash forward to Adam having 5 children, but you did not always feel quite as open as you do now about this idea of adoption. So let's go ahead and play clip 3.
Adam, on the other hand, was completely against it.
Really? Adoption?
Yeah. Oh, completely. He said, I don't think I could ever love a child that was not my own. It was not blood, you know. He said, I feel like that if we ever had a child that was biological after that, you would be able to tell the difference between the adopted and the biological child. And, I mean, I lay in bed because even after we found out we couldn't have kids, he still wasn't ready to pursue adoption. He was just no. And I remember laying in bed several nights just crying, saying, well, God, I mean, I'm out of options. Right. If I can't have one naturally and I can't adopt, what other choice is there, And I think the first turnaround for Adam was he was listening to, I want to say it was Focus on the Family, and they had brought up something about adopting. He said, and for some reason that day it just really resonated in him and really stuck. And from that point on, it was, if I talked about it, it was a lot easier. He didn't get mad, he didn't get frustrated, And I don't know what point he was just completely okay with it, but at first it was really hard. Really hard.
Yeah, well.
Again, the tears were flowing.
Yeah. That Focus on the Family broadcast, I wish I could remember the exact date, but it was a Focus on the Family talking about adoption, and it just kind of pricked my heart, and it softened me really to adoption, and so that's when it changed. And I don't know if it was a process so much or if it was just almost a complete turnaround. Amy says it was a process, so
It was definitely a process even still.
So Amy, this was 10 years ago, and God was just starting the process. But let's flash forward to now. When you hear Adam say, or you think back to him saying that he could never love a child that was not biologically his, like it was his own. What do you see in Adam as a father now?
I don't think that I could have asked for a better husband that could be a better father to my children. I mean, I don't think that he could love them. I know he couldn't love them anymore if they were biological. Those little girls have him wrapped tight.
every one of them.
So, I mean, he's just a big teddy bear with them.
How do you think God brought that process about in his heart? And obviously you were praying a lot.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I don't feel like that biologically was what God planned for us. And so I believe that he took that opportunity to prick Adam's heart, to say, okay, it's time. It's time for us to move forward in this process. But I think that Adam had to go through all those things in his brain and in his heart before God could prick his heart. He had to feel those feelings. He had to go through those things. I think that it needed to be a difficult process for him in order for him to cherish and be the father that he is now.
Amen. You mentioned something, and I'm not going to play this last clip. I'm just going to summarize it. But that the lady who came up to you and said, "I don't think you're going to have to adopt," and you said, "I don't feel like I have to adopt," and that's almost saying, what are you going to think of the children that I have if you think that I had to adopt them?
Right.
So what this brings out, and I'd like to talk about this for a minute. Now that you have adopted, I think one of the concerns that people have when they're trying to let go of biological children and God's trying to move them to adoption is they think of it like someone who gives you a Christmas or a birthday present who doesn't know you well, and you open it up and it's not what you wanted, and your mom looks over at you and is like, you better smile because Grandma gave you that ugly sweater, and you go, oh, Grandma's watching, and you put on that fake smile, and yeah, but you're faking it. And so I know for me, I've struggled with thinking if the Lord leads me to not have a biological child, but to adopt, will it feel the same? Will it still fulfill the desires that I had? Am I going to have this fake sense of joy? And so now here you guys are on the other side of it. 10 years later, do you feel like you've had to fake the joy?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. There's not been a moment of faking. From the moment that our son Alex came into our home, it was, he was ours. It was a fit. And it's been that way with every one of our children. It's been a fit, it was like they're where they're supposed to be. They're in their home.
So there was a time and a season of transition in your heart where God was preparing Adam. God was allowing you to say, okay, maybe I won't feel that belly kicks inside my own belly. But yet now that you're on the other side of it, you're filled with so much fulfillment and joy you can't imagine looking back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going to say that there's not still that tiny desire to be able to experience pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look and I think, but if I had would I have the children that I have now?
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to choose, then I'm going to choose the adoption full force because those are my kids.
Right.
Those are my babies, and if anybody ever tried to tell me differently, they might have a fight on their hands.
Now, that's not to say that adoption doesn't come with its own set of challenges.
Absolutely.
What would you say has been the number one challenge of adoption, and how has God used it in your life?
Well, I think through fostering, the hardest part and the challenge that's been to overcome is that they did not have stability, and keeping them I can't think of the best way of putting it, but reassuring them that they are in a stable home now, because in foster care they think they're fine, and then they just get picked up and they go to somebody else's home or whatever, and that's a very traumatic time for them.
Yes.
And it's something that when you are quote unquote rescuing somebody from foster care or whatever, that's not something you think about, but it also is something that is real, and there's still some challenges, even though all of our kids now feel secure. It's been not 6 years, but over 5 years since they were fully adopted for the first three, but still the security of stableness sometimes can still creep up.
How about you,
I
Haley?
agree. And something that I thought of when he was saying that is they don't feel like they're being rescued. They don't feel like that it's, oh, you're rescuing me. They feel like you're
taking
ripping
me away.
them. You're ripping them away from what they've even if they've only been in that home for a short time, you're taking me away from what I knew. I know that one of our children struggled with us taking them away from their mom. Like that's where I'm supposed to be, and for a long time there was that
kind of
that
resentment.
fight. Yeah. I think it's just been recently, in the last couple of years, that they've come to terms with it and realized, that's not what they were doing at all.
And what has that taught you through that process about God adopting us and His eternal love?
I'm glad He's a patient God because sometimes it was hard for us to be patient through it all. I think we really struggled with feeling like, did we really make the right decision? But through it all, I really feel like that God had a plan, and this was His plan, and I think they're seeing it too.
We as humans still mess stuff up, but it was still His plan. So that's just we're not perfect. We're not somebody that we put on a pedestal or anything like that. We're just trying to go through the daily struggles that anybody else would go through. And some people say, well, it's a little worse with having adopted children. I don't think so. I mean, there are some challenges that are.
It's different.
But yeah, it's different. But we still have a lot of the same teenage things or whatever. So.
Well, Amy, we're about out of time, but I'd like to have you pray for anyone listening who God might be redirecting their dreams. If anyone's listening right now, would you just pray a short prayer for us?
Yeah. Lord, I ask that you would help each person that's going through those issues, Lord. Help them to realize that it's okay, God, if you redirect them to a different path, that the love will still be there no matter what.
Yes.
Or give them strength and peace to know that you're there. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Adam, Amy, we're going to have you back for sure. But everyone, thank you for listening to Hannah's Heart on American Family Radio.